Hey there, I am Meredith and I am an intuitive and an astrologer based out of the mountains of North Carolina. I really cleaned up and redecorated in my cabin yesterday, so it feels very spacious and I'm grateful to be here. It's interesting, when you find yourself in a place that you really, or when I find myself in a place that I really want to stay, I do a lot to I've been cleaning and, if you've known me for a long time or if you know me closely, then you know that in the past I have been pretty messy. I have a somewhat equal distribution of mess in my chart versus cleanliness. I have a Virgo stellium, but I have a Pisces moon and Sag rising. So, we do our best with the mess, but definitely wanted to sort of let the house know that I'm happy to be here. And so I've cleaned up in here and it looks amazing, but I know you guys can't see it, but even just from when I moved, there were things that I just kind of threw places and was able to get all of that up yesterday. So it's really exciting. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the Leo new moon and this Jupiter retrograde in Aries. I'm gonna talk about both of those things because it's just interesting. It has to me, this energy has a very obvious theme. And I'm gonna look at the chart of the moment as well, because I believe that in the chart of the moment, the new moon is exact, but I'm gonna pull that up in just a second. But yeah, so I want to discuss with you guys how, what is a new moon to begin with, right? So a new moon is it's where the sun and the moon are in the very same sign. And let's see if I can, sorry, let me just, all right, perfect. Got it up for when I need it. So the new moon is when the sun and the moon are in the same sign. So I don't know if any of you guys watched my full moon in Capricorn video, but I kind of explained that when there's a full moon, and this is one of the many cycles that we experience as humans. Sort of the moon phases. And so, the moon starts off as new, and this is when the moon and the sun are in the same sign, and this represents or marks a new beginning in some area of our lives, right? And then we see sort of over the course of that month how those new seeds play out, and even 6 months out. The full moon and the new moon are going to have cycles that are 2 weeks, 1 month, and then 6 months. If you like to track that sort of thing, I like to try. I'm I have all my transits being tracked for sure, but by myself, not by any app or anything. I just look at it every day. But in fact, I don't recommend using apps like CoStar, and I don't know, some of their updates are just weird. But anyway, so we go through a moon phase, a personal moon phase, where we start off something new. It builds to a peak, and then we're kind of on the release. So the full moon is what happens just before the moon begins to wane, which is sort of where the energy dies off. There's a little bit of a closing, a little bit of a completion. This is a 28-day cycle. So every 2 weeks thereabouts, there's a new moon. Every 2 weeks, there's a, and then every 2 weeks there's a full moon. So it's twice a month there's a lunar event. But I would say that this new moon is in Leo, and actually your astrologer extraordinaire is a Leo. So I'm definitely qualified to speak to this sign. So what is the sign of Leo? Well, the sign of Leo is creativity in its bare bones, right? It's creativity, self-expression, it's leadership, and kind of, Leo is represented by the sun. And it's also represented by like royalty. So, you know, it's like it can be like a somewhat self-centered energy, but I think that in this society we've really mistaken taking care of ourselves and turning inward as selfish, and I think that sometimes selfishness can be a sacred thing and it can be a good thing. We wouldn't get anywhere without self-preservation, which is what the signs of Aries and Leo, which is the signs that we're dealing with today, share with us, right? So it's like the divine child, like the laughter of a child, that is Leo. It is play. It is new love. It is like, Leo is a very like amorous sign. And, so I think that this could start off a new beginning of fun, joyful expansion, creativity, all of those things. Obviously, there is a shadow of Leo. I think that, Leo and Aquarius, because you'll see when like the moon comes full in the sign of Aquarius, Leo and Aquarius function on an axis. You can't have the self without others. And, you believe it or not, you can't have necessarily others without the self. You can't just kind of like isolate one of those things and then be done with it. You kind of have to like, you have to give it a little go. You have to kind of like, you have to like be a person that both like honors self and has a group of friends or a group associated with you that is supportive of what you're doing as yourself. That's like the Leo Aquarius polarity. So to me, I see a lot of people disconnecting themselves from one or the other side of that polarity, where people go all the way into the group identity and they're very like focused on what the needs of the group are, but then they come home and they're hungry and they're spent and they're tired and they don't have any energy left for anything creative or fun or exciting, right? So I just want to make a little personal observation and throw this out there. So in the transits of 2020 and 2021 and a little less 2022 because Jupiter came into Aries, but still with Saturn in Aquarius, which is kind of that, it feels like a limiting, like artificial force that wants to kind of clamp down on interactions. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure we all know what I'm talking about, like, at least if you're watching this, but then Uranus and Taurus is kind of like adding a layer of instability to our real world, right? And, Aquarius, and now the nodes are in Taurus and Scorpio. So every single fixed sign has been represented in this by the outer planets, with the exception of Leo. I just saw like an ambulance drive by. I'm going to take that as personal confirmation and hope everybody's okay. So I think that, it's very evident to me that when I move around in the world right now, I'm not really seeing too much spirit. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like someone took a vacuum and just kind of sucked a lot of the spirit energy out with a straw. I mean, like, I don't feel this in my own life, but I do feel like the attempt at that. And I see a lot of people looking less spirited, less creative, less enlivened than they were before. And of course, this isn't the case for everybody, but I'm just saying it's a general trend to kind of like rely more on the mind and on the mental and on the artificial, frankly, like AI and stuff like that. It's a trend to rely more on those things than the stuff of fire signs. Fire signs are playful, and I mean, frankly, like all of the elements represent a different aspect of us, right? Like the water signs are the emotional body, the earth signs are the physical body, the air signs are the mental body, and then the fire signs are the spiritual body. They are the, like, that is the flame, you know? So when there's not really a whole lot of fire signs or any concentration of that, we tend to, yeah, rely way more heavily on maybe like a materialist framework or like analysis. It's not bad. It's just we want to like do both of those things simultaneously, right? Like it's not a bad thing to be analytical. It's not a bad, because I'm trust me, like it's not a bad thing to use your mind, but it is like, it is something that you don't want to disconnect from your heart. So my hope for everyone with this new moon is that you may come back to your heart and come back in like into like what brings you that creative feeling of joy, like what makes you feel all like liquid and all inspired, and like what makes you feel like, you know, you want to give your heart to something. I mean, it's like, you know, I think that in a time that maybe seems a little like, meh, meh, you know, it's like being kind to people and like really like, you know, firing up like from the heart space. You know, one of my favorite visualization exercises to do, especially, you know, when I am feeling maybe like drained or tired. And as y'all know, I am a projector and I talk about that a lot. And so, yes, I do get drained and tired, and that's okay, you know. But when I get drained and when I get tired, I imagine like in the center of my heart, just like the sun, warmth. And that's my energy, that's my divinity. And guess what? If you can think and you can imagine that, then you have that going on as an aspect of you as well. Leo calls us to remember like the ridiculous imagination that we had when we were a child. And it's kind of like, you know, I think of Aquarius being very Saturn ruled as what happens kind of like when we grow up, right? We lose a little bit of that childlike grandiosity, and we move into a space that's a little bit more sober, more sobering. So let's look at this chart really fast before I move on to Jupiter retrograde. And I'm just gonna analyze what I see. So I don't really know if I would count that this new moon in Leo is in an opposition to Pluto. That's a wide orb. That's like about an 8-degree orb. So we might be able to feel a little bit the like transformation and change and whoa, and you know, we might be able to feel that a little bit, but that's really truly just like par for the course, I think. And yeah, like we have so I see that the new moon is trining Jupiter, and that's really nice. So the reason that I woke up at the ass crack of dawn to make this video is because I wanted to get it out there so that people could see it. And so that if there's anything else that you feel like you want to start or that you want to change or that you want to, you know, this is a great time, I think. I mean, I know that like it's uncertain and whatever, but it's like we all know that like we've had, for lack of a better words, like creator kind of telling us that we need to do something or other. And this to me is like, you need to like read those signs and like literally hear them like right now. And I know that that sounds very like dogmatic and like authoritarian, but it does, like this is the time right now to like to pivot, to like do the things to make like to put a fire under your butt kind of, right? With the moon and a trine to Jupiter, this really blesses our steps that we take today. So one thing that I'm noticing about this new moon chart is that Mercury is coming up into an opposition to Saturn. You know, kind of what I was talking about earlier, right? Mercury in Leo wants to express itself. It wants to create life. It like, you know, and Saturn is like, squeeze, you know, I think it's, you know, kind of makes it so that we have a hard time expressing yourself. And also I think it's probably also not a bad thing with Saturn retrograde, because we're like giving more consideration to what we say ahead of time, which, like, with all of the impulsive energy of Mars, Uranus, and the North Node connecting, like, we need a little bit of that Saturn is not a bad idea. And, you know, Saturn is in a square to this conjunction, and I made a whole lecture on it, if you want to watch it. But it's a big, this conjunction is going to change a lot in our world, and pretty quickly. So I think that that's also why I'm kind of like, all right, you know, like, if you have any like cleaning or like preparation or any like ritual or any like juicy magical thing that you still want to do it today. Or like, you know, I'm not saying that I believe personally that magic works at any time, but like this morning, like today is a really good day to do a ritual, you know, and really like to draw out the spirit in you. And so that is like what is more actively creating, in my opinion. I think that's a really good thing to do. But yeah, let me look and see if there's anything else that's like really noteworthy. I mean, obviously right now Mercury is squaring exactly this Uranus North Node and Mars. So that's kind of like one of the things that kind of comes up with that in this new moon energy is like having like those really like inconvenient realizations where you're like, God damn it. Like, I was really hoping that I could like, you know, keep going. I was hoping that I could just ignore, you know, and I think that this is where like we can't ignore anymore, right? I hope that, yeah, like with the changes that come through for you guys with the Uranus North Node and Mars conjunction. I mean, Uranus is neutral, does not like to be in Taurus, but hopefully it affects you guys both, like in equal measure. Like I think that I've seen Uranus impact people positively, but I've also seen Uranus impact people negatively. So I hope that you guys really reap the positive personal benefits of this transit. And like I've kind of said in some of my videos leading up to the lecture that I created, just as an aside, I hope that you have what you need so that you can really like, you know, take the space to like sit with whatever changes are coming up in your world without being overwhelmed and ensnared in the physical and survival kind of. Not that I think it'll be like that. It's more like an initiation of a new kind of sequence of time. So it's like, you know, like, for example, when the Saturn and Pluto connection happened in January of 2020, we didn't have the first Rona case in the US until March. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. It takes some time to get burning, but I think that there's things in our personal life that come through like quickly that we want to just be attentive to and aware of, right? So let's talk a little bit about this Jupiter retrograde. So today is July 28th, and this is going to retrograde, I believe, until November 23rd. I might be tripping on that because I don't know, but I'm going to pull up the date and make sure. Yep, I was right. November 23rd is when that's happening, when Jupiter is stationing direct. In October, Jupiter is going to go back into Pisces. So I'm going to talk all about this, and I'm going to, yeah, first talk about like, obviously Jupiter in Aries, like brings our instincts to the surface, and we have to listen to them and heed them. I've actually known a lot of like, I don't know whether you want to call it like liberty oriented people or just people who are like aware of what's going on in the world. I have noticed that a lot of people like that have been literally training, myself included, like physically. Like I have been like way more physically active in the Jupiter and Aries transit, almost as if I'm preparing my body for something, you know? And I think that that's a really good thing. I think that with Jupiter and Aries, it does bring the emphasis to the individual. And I think that I talked a lot about like a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit on here about like false individualism, false collectivism. It's like we need community, and we need, as far as I'm concerned, like I'm a very relational creature. So I need community, and I need like support and to be supporting others. Like that's just like a need, it's like a need that I have. But also I can recognize when like the needs of the individual are being like absolutely demolished for the needs of a very fragmented and unhealed and easily controlled collective. So I'm like, meh, it's like, I think that this is a great time with Jupiter and Aries to be as, I mean, run this through your own chart and through your own knowing, because like for me, of course, I have like way less of a problem with individualism because my chart is actually stacked in the sense that I naturally merge with other people, but I'm supposed to maybe more go my own way. So it's like, I think that for me, it's harder, much harder to, to prioritize myself first, to have healthy boundaries, those kinds of things. It's harder for me to do that than to connect with other people and to give all myself away to other people, right? So obviously you want to like temper everything that every astrologer tells you over your own tendencies, which can be found in your own birth chart, by the way. And if you'd like a reading, I would love to sit with you on that. And and kind of just discover like some of those inner tendencies. I think learning our astrology is like super important right now. So with Jupiter retrograde, I think that this is going to be a little bit of an oof. Jupiter retrograde in the summer is like, ooh, it's like, I think that there are a lot of people that have been kind of like hoping that like things will just return to the way that they were, and that we'll all go back to like not living in an extremely polarized world, and like that, with a rising amount of chaos. I don't think that there is really like a strong like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's kind of nice because I can just do my thing. I can just do my routines, but I am aware that like there are other things that are at play right now, I think, in terms of like world events and staging and things like that. So I think that, Jupiter retrograde could feel a little bit like it's harder to sweep some of the bigger problems that are being created right now under the rug, especially with the economy, I think, and with other things too. But I think that with Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, it's the planet of optimism and hope and luck and things like this, right? The teacher, the guru, the guide, it's like the spiritual energy or the spiritual principle, in addition to Neptune, I feel like. But with Jupiter stationing retrograde, it kind of like means that we have to be the ones to create the opportunities and create the luck, and doubly so with Jupiter and Aries, right? So in order to create life, or in order to create and manifest and drive your own opportunities forward and find them, like find the open windows as doors close, you have to be the one, and I don't think that, when I say creation, or I'm not necessarily even talking about action. I'm not even talking about like hitting the pavement and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and just doing it, that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about creating. I'm talking about like creating in like the above dimensions, which then matriculate into the physical. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about creation. And what does that require? Kind of going back to the beginning. It requires fire, which is spirit, which is imagination, creativity. So I think that, this is good for people who have like their own pulse, their own sense of lifeblood and magic and the spirit that courses through them. To me, I feel like those people will be fine. But I think that like the majority of people who don't know how to create or how to mock things up, or and I'll definitely address all of this stuff too in my energy series that I'm doing. But it's like there's a level of like faith that we have to have within ourselves. This is obviously like a very initiatory time. Ra Uru Hu from Human Design and Rudolf Steiner, who created the system of anthroposophy, they both say that this initiation is individual. So we have to have the trust and faith within ourselves to know that our soul truly knows what to do, right? And gosh, if anything is going to teach us that, it's going to be this year with Jupiter in Pisces at the beginning of the year, Aries in the middle of the year, right? Obviously, it's stationing retrograde today, and then it is moving through like quote back or further away from us through Aries, and then back into Pisces, October, November. So in November, when Jupiter stations direct, it will be at the last few degrees of Pisces, and it will be with Neptune. So remember how you fell asleep at the beginning of this year, potentially. I think Jupiter and Pisces, like I said, at the beginning of the year and all of the things can be extremely magical. But we have to like also contrast that with where we are. We are in the middle of, at least if your feet are on the ground on planet Earth, I'm not talking about timelines. I'm not talking about this 3D, 5D shit right now. We have all of the dimensions within us. So 5D is just a state of mind as far as I'm concerned. And I don't want to hear about it anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm just joking. But what I was going to say is like, if your feet are on the ground and you're like watching, the majority of the people on planet Earth are taking place in a spiritual devolution, de-evolution, devolve. People are devolving. So we have to look at like these transits in context where, I think that some of the negative or shadow traits of an energy, of a planetary energy, are more likely to show up during a de-evolution. I think my friend Amy calls it sundown, when people go into their kind of like crazy, anyway. So I'll just take a sip of my coffee, catch my breath, figure out what I was talking about. Yeah, so with Jupiter and Aries in this retrograde station, it's like, it's bringing out maybe like a little bit the more shadowy quality of people becoming a little bit more instinctual, a little bit more like, primal. That just happens when Jupiter is in Aries. And I think that can go both ways. You can save someone's life, or you can kind of be one of those people that are walking around naked all the time. There's so many people that are like naked, butt-ass naked, like on the street. And I've seen so many different videos and like little clips of that. I think that's like the shadow of like the very late Jupiter and Pisces, Jupiter and Aries energy, is like all the people walking around butt-ass naked outside. In the collective, I think that this is going to, it's kind of like last year where Jupiter stationed retrograde. Before Jupiter stationed retrograde over the summer, it was like, everybody back to normal, just do this one thing and then we're just going to go right back to the way things were. And I'm sorry to say that like that was not the case. And whatever Delta is, which like, not here to get into a debate about it, I have kept track of every lie since the beginning. So I'm not here to get into a debate about it, but there was that whole Delta thing. And, and then the like latter part of the year kind of got hairy, like pretty hairy, right? So I think that we have to like genuinely look at and reckon with so that we can know how to navigate and survive the way that things are looking right now. And I think Jupiter and retrograde, if people haven't been keeping like a close enough look, or if people haven't been building where they are, which is very North Node in Taurus, I think it's going to take them by surprise a little bit, and it's going to be like, oh, Aries is a sign of war. So I think that like, obviously with the North Node Uranus, Mars conjunction, I put several predictions out. One of them is obviously, this is like low hanging fruit as a prediction, is like war, an increased sort of like unstable environment, maybe. Jupiter retrograde in Aries, I think could bring out, some of like, it's like, all right, Jupiter stationed, and I'm going to bring something up. Actually, I'm going to look for this article. You guys are so patient. I wanted to record this in the morning, which comes with me being a little bit derp, Excuse me. Hmm. Hmm. All right, I found it. All right, here we go. So I'm going to share my screen once again. I do think it's really interesting. I saw this on Shane's Instagram. Zelensky cover. It's like, it's ridiculous to me. I mean, so this is the Vogue like cover of whatever like recent edition of Vogue came out. And I mean, so it's like they're kind of trying to make like war like really sexy, and it just reminds me of like, I don't know, this is weird to me, this like whole Vogue with Zelensky on the cover and like just really making them appear sexy. I mean, he was an actor, but I'm not going to get into that right now, but definitely want to share that I think that's really fucking weird. And then also think it's really interesting that Jupiter came to the 8th degree of Aries, stationed and stopped basically because it's stationing retrograde today. And this article came out. And I think that, so the way that things kind of seem like they're done around here is like, they put things out later, like, oops, oh no, we're sorry. And the conspiracy theorists are right. So I think that more of this type of thing is probably to be expected a little bit under the rug, under the table as this Jupiter retrograde transit gets going, and it's going to be like, hang on a second, wait, what, why were we over there, and what's going on, and why are we at war right now, why did we spend so much money over there? Hopefully the truth of why we actually spent so much money over there comes out as inflation and this kind of economic reality becomes more stark. I hope that we are able to see why we have spent a lot of aid in Ukraine, because it is most certainly not whatever the fuck reason that they were sharing. I think that around that time I brought up like the whole manufactured consent thing, and really like that's how they get people to want to go to, like, it's like, we have to remember like the propaganda efforts of pre-World War II, because we are there, but like on steroids, right? So you just have to assume that like everything is propaganda and trust yourself, which is the ultimate, like this retrograde, I think for the people who are like undergoing a natural evolution, it like sinks you into the level of the cells. And it's going to be like, This is what I need to do. And your body will just know. Heal your relationship with your body and your relationship with yourself during this Jupiter retrograde transit. And I promise you will not regret it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I am Meredith, and it has been a joy to connect with you. I know it was kind of all over the place because when I started recording this video, it was like 4:50. So hopefully I'll be able to get this out, and yeah, look out for new episodes of Gold Pill. If you want a reading with me, let me know. I do offer a sliding scale. I don't have that listed anywhere, but it's like if people reach out to me, I will honor that for you. So let me meet you where you're at if you need support. And I hope that you have a brilliant and amazing day. Take care of yourselves. All right. Bye.